I'm gonna pass it off on to Diane, who's gonna do the presentation for us. But thank you all for coming and hopefully enlighten everybody as to why we're doing this.
So my name is Diane Rowe. I'm the interim administrator for Clintonville while the city is looking for their next permanent administrator, so I'm just standing in temporarily. I guess I had great timing. So again, as the mayor said, thanks for coming, and I have a short presentation to just kind of talk about where we are and why we're doing this, and then the rest is really just to be for discussion about listening session, where we go from here. So, and unfortunately our little clicker doesn't work. So first, why are we here? It's to share information that led to the recent city actions, explain concerns with the current agreement for ambulance service, gather feedback from our partner municipalities, and discuss potential paths forward. So first off, is what prompted this is in 2023, the state created this new innovation grant program. And the purpose of it was to give local governments an opportunity fund in the form of funds to find innovative ways to deliver services. And Clintonville applied for that grant, and it was the first step of it, or first phase of it, was a planning grant. It was 100% funded by the state. And it was, the goal of these grants is for innovation, collaboration, and long-term cost efficiency and improving service. As I mentioned, the planning grants were 100%, that's what the city got. And then I'll get into the next part a little bit later, but just the second part of that grant is the innovation grant for implementation. So to actually take the study and implement some of the recommendations of it, there's a grant for that part of it too, which again, I'll get into a little bit later. So the city got the planning grant. Oh, I didn't advance it. Let's try this again. Or no. There we go. So the city got $32,500. I'm just not having some luck here today. There. $32,500 for the innovation planning grant. So that was to do a study. And we contracted with Fire LLC. It's a company of retired fire chiefs that do fire and ambulance type EMS services and studies throughout the state, actually and beyond. And so the study was to do a review of the current emergency response systems. It was both fire and ambulance, and the staffing models, equipment, facilities, to do an analysis of it, an evaluation, and report out. And the goals were to develop strategic recommendations for improving efficiency and sustainability, and to evaluate if the implementation of strategic recommendations would qualify for that next grant that I was talking about. I'll get this, yeah. All right, so the study reviewed 3 scenarios. One is, and I gotta backtrack a little bit. This grant is, which?
Your arm was on the screen.
I'm sorry, what?
Your arm was over the light.
Oh, actually, I feel like I don't know where to stand. Actually, I think I will. I'm used to standing, but I think that would work better so that you guys can see better, and I won't maybe be as distracting turning back and forth this one as much. Okay. So the report, it analyzed 3 options. One was to do a full transfer to another provider. The second one I shouldn't say second, just the 3 of them. Create a joint department of ambulance and fire with the current Clintonville Fire Department. And lastly is to contract with a nonprofit or private provider, as like we do now. So the study also, that was the main goal, but in the course of the study, it ended up identifying questions and concerns related to the governance, funding, long-term sustainability, and the current Clintonville area ambulance service agreement. The agreement was first in 2021, and from what we have seen, it does not appear that it has been updated substantially in any way since, I said 2021, since 2001. So those findings and the concerns brought up by that study prompted the city of Clintonville to also look at the original 2001 agreement. And in reviewing that, it also brought up some concerns where we felt like there needs to be some updates, some negotiations to bring that contract up to date. 25 years is a long time for a contract to not have any changes. So that led the city to do the, pass a resolution of a notice to withdraw. And the reason that was done is because the agreement says that any notice to, or any removal, whatever, has to be done by July 1st of the year prior to the fiscal year that would then obligate us. So for 2027, that means that we had to provide notice by July 1. And the reason that Clintonville did it, not necessarily to withdraw, we don't know yet, but it was because that timeline was looming, and otherwise the contract would automatically renew, and the terms were just not acceptable. I mean, there were things that the city needed to have changed and wanted to discuss, but the timing did not provide for that. We just had to provide the notice to not renew, so that really buying us some time to talk about this. So filing the notice preserves Clintonville's ability to discuss and evaluate options. And the thing I want to stress here is that no decisions have been made about what we're going to do. The only decision that was made is that the current contract as it is not acceptable to the city of Clintonville. So some of the things that were brought up as concerns, either by the study or in reviewing the existing contract, one is that the funding formula may not actually, may not be adequate, may not reflect the actual services that are provided. Granted, one of the concerns of Clintonville is that, as the largest population, Clintonville pays for the largest chunk, which is understandable given that we have the largest population. But on the flip side of it, we also only have one vote. So even though the cost is 34%, I think it is, on Clintonville, we have only one vote, equal to a community that, say, only has 5%. Also, the voting structure provides, as it is equal across the board for everyone, but cost is population-based. Also, liability is shared equally, and this is actually a bonus for Clintonville because we're the bigger community, but it's actually can be more of a hardship on the smaller communities if liability is equal for us as it is for a small community. Any kind of, just liability equally shared too. Another one is that if members withdraw, they forfeit all rights to the assets. So that's concerning because there are capital contributions, along with the operations. So having to forfeit all ownership of those assets is a concern. There's no clear process to modify the agreement, which goes back to why Clintonville did the notice to withdraw. Is in looking at the contract, it talks about a 2/3 vote for changes to bylaws, and then it's kind of lumped in that everything else is a majority vote, but there's really no process identified in the contract on how you go about that. How do you bring forward any, saying we want to look at this? The contract says that it will be reviewed annually and re-signed every 2 years. I don't know if it's reviewed annually. I'm guessing it is at the board, but we couldn't find a copy that has been signed since 2001. So then there's also no defined process about how that withdrawal affects membership, cost, everything else of the remaining communities. So we know how to withdraw, but then what does that mean for everybody else? It's not identified in the contract, or anything that we could find, we saw. And, okay, there's no process for evaluating or approving ambulance service contracts with non-member communities. There's a process to admit new communities into it as a membership and an ownership, but not for providing services by contract to other municipalities that are not owners/members. And then lastly, as I mentioned, there's not been that we could find a comprehensive review of the contract or amendment in over 25 years. So the next step is to explore options. One is to revise the current contract. Another is to explore ambulance service through another provider. And the third is to internalize and create a municipal ambulance service in conjunction with the Clintonville's fire department. So what we're hoping to learn today from the rest of the membership of the CAS is what do you think works well today? What concerns do others have? We've showed what our concerns are, what Clintonville has concerns with. What changes would you like to see to improve the current arrangement? And what factors are most important to you when evaluating options? And some things that we've identified as what we should consider, when I say we as Clintonville, and we by extension we think members, because you guys are a part of it too, is service reliability and coverage, capacity for future growth, workforce retention and recruitment, financial sustainability, and here's where I bring in the innovation grant eligibility, and I'll get more into that later because there are some financial opportunities for us. And really I believe any three of the options could result in some eligibility on this grant. And I say I believe only because it's pretty flexible, the grant is, and it's really got to be about communities working together to provide services in an efficient way. The only thing I say is that I believe is because if everything stays just the same, it's not, because it's nothing different. I'm not saying that one way, right, wrong, or indifferent. It's just that it's not cut and dried on what would qualify, because it really is based on what the model would be. And again, I'll get into talking about what that grant could provide. Other options or considerations to think of when exploring options is governance and local control, impact of member withdrawals, and facility and capital requirements. Oh, actually, didn't go. I must have missed. I'll get into the innovation grant. I thought I had a slide on it, but I had to do some editing to make it bigger here, so I must have cut it off. So the innovation grant that I'm talking about is if we were to have some kind of service, and ambulance is one of the examples, fire is another, IT, zoning, building administration, there's all kinds of different services of local governments that qualify for this grant. And if communities work together, or like contract with one another, or contract jointly to another service provider, or something like that, similar to that, where it's actually transferring a service, and the cost of that is within 110% of what it was originally, then the communities participating could get 25% of the cost of that service for the next 5 years. So it's a formula, but that's the grant program, and it's to try to encourage communities to work together or just find alternative ways to provide services. So that grant program is available until, I want to say 2030, but I don't remember for sure. But I do know that it's available for up to 5 years, where you get an annual payment of 25%. So that's really what prompted all of this, is that we knew that grant was available. We got the planning grant, and it was to really explore, is that something that we might want to look into, and would it be applicable here, and would it benefit both the communities, the local government, and the residents. So with that, turning it over. And, like I said, what we're kind of looking at is, what do you think is going well? What would you like to see? What do you think would be a good improvement? Just your thoughts.
I'm from the village of Big Falls, very small community. I can only speak for myself, but I'd like to speak for the mass here. It came as a big surprise to our village that Clintonville was pulling out, okay? And I have all the paperwork that you guys have sent around. But just like you stated, it's not that you're pulling out, that this is just a buffer, a time buffer to better the contract or to improve the verbiage and obviously make it up to date.
It could be. We feel that there's three options: either revise the contract or go a different route. And going that different route would mean either bringing it in-house with our fire department or contracting with another provider. So it was, we hadn't made up our minds on, because we need to explore all three options and what works best for the city of Clintonville, for our residents. And as part of that, we wanted to talk to the rest of the group too, to see what your thoughts are. So it's not necessarily saying just buying time to update the contract. That's one of three things that we're looking at. But we really need to investigate more on these other options, but before doing that, wanted to talk to the group to see where you guys stand.
Chris, go up to the mayor in the city of Marion, and we had our meeting actually a day before you guys. We withdrew, and then you guys withdrew like the next day, only because your meeting was the day after ours. Anyway, we shared a lot of the same concerns that you presented, and we were doing our due diligence, reviewing all the contracts that we have for any services provided to our residents, and we're made a decision that it was best for the community of Marion to withdraw from the Clintonville ambulance service based highly on the lack of service we were getting for what we were paying for. If it was called out in the contract, we didn't feel like, and the council members didn't feel like they were getting the services, the covers that we were supposed to be getting. And we've got an ambulance housed in our community, but a lot of times that ambulance may go out for a call and would have to sit and wait for an ambulance to come from Clintonville to do what needed to be done while the person sat there and waited. So we started exploring other options. So we moved to withdrawal. We actually looked at going with a different provider, and then you guys withdrew, and we're still considering our options. But I guess that's where we're at. The last time we signed the contract was in 2016. That's the copy that I have that someone from Clintonville signed as well.
Okay.
But still, it's an interesting contract that it's not, I think it states in there that if there's no changes made, it just automatically reviews. You don't have to sign it. I think we've done a poor job as community members providing oversight to the ambulance service, because I don't know how we got in this situation. We've invested all this money in all the equipment that they have and everything else, but it seems, I'll just say it, I think the business is being run poorly. They have assets, they have cash on hand, I believe, but as a member, I can't prove that because I don't have that information in front of me, and I don't know how I get that information provided from me, so there needs to be a lot more transparency. I guess that's our frustration, and that's kind of where we sit and where we're at. So we would love to be part of something moving forward. We have a path moving forward that we're very comfortable taking that does involve maybe walking away from assets that we've invested in with our taxpayers' money, but the avenue we're exploring, we feel is gonna be better service for our residents, that we're not getting the service we deserve right now, we're paying for right now. So that's kind of where we're at.
I got a question. You're talking about all this grant money. I mean, currently, the way I see the Clintonville area ambulance service is already managing money fine. The balance is good in the checkbook. What do you feel you're gonna gain by this grant money?
Well, we don't know for sure. I mean, it's just one of the reasons what prompted us to do the study is because it was available. But the grant money is actually to the local governments. So for, let's say Clintonville, I don't know what let's say we pay $100,000. I'm just throwing a number out. Let's say we pay $100,000 right now for ambulance service as our contribution to the ambulance service right now. And we find some kind of innovative way to provide that service a little differently, then we would get 25% of that $100,000 each year for 5 years. So it would help offset the cost of what we're paying for. So it wouldn't be going directly to the ambulance service, it goes to the local governments who are responsible for providing the service.
So that would be a benefit to the city of Clinton.
It would be a benefit to every community. I mean, so let's say Marion and Clintonville did this, did some process together, then Marion would get 25% and Clintonville would get 25% of what you had paid previously for ambulance service. So it's whoever partners with it.
That would be involving in reworking the contract or leaving the Clintonville ambulance service?
I think both would, and that's where I was getting into where it's like, it's not real clear.
You don't pull out of the Clintonville ambulance.
I believe so. It would have to be some restructuring, because it wouldn't be just a redo of what's existing. It's something that ultimately, if I couldn't really verify anything with the Department of Revenue, which is where the grant comes from, because you really can't tell unless you can explain to them what the model is going to be, what it was and what it's going to be. And then that's where they kind of determine whether or not it was, most things are more cut and dried. Like let's say, I'm gonna use Marion as an example here. Let's say right now you guys do building inspection in-house and we do building inspection in-house, and we decide that if we go together and share in a building inspection, then that would qualify and we could each get 25% of that cost. I say that's more cut and dried because there's already a structure there, so I don't know what modification would be eligible or not.
So in other words, the way I'm hearing it, when it comes to the grant money, all that would have to be done is maybe some restructuring of the contract. So that really becomes not relevant to the real problem, which I'm getting conflicting stories, whether the service in Marion is fully staffed or not fully staffed, because I'm from the town of DuPont, I'm hearing conflicting stories. One side, it's always, other than maybe a couple minutes here or there, and another side, it goes days and days that it hasn't been covered. So I really think, from what I'm understanding in all this situation is the coverage for the city of Marion, which is the closest to the town of DuPont. So that's the situation to where maybe that does need to be addressed some way, somehow.
Well, and the grant is really, that was just about an opportunity. It is not the driving factor at all. It's just that is what prompted, the availability of those funds is what prompted the study. And as I mentioned, the study was also about fire department, and it identified some things that we have to talk about internally with, with Clintonville about, our buildings, our capital, different things like that. The study identified too, but that's just specific to Clintonville. This was the whole group, and so that's why we wanted to bring out some of these ambulance-only things, along with then, like I said, it kind of prompted us to look at that contract again. So again, I just want to stress the grant isn't a driver, it's just an opportunity to be aware of.
Which can get reused either way, no matter what happens.
Potentially. I only say that potentially because it's a new grant program, and so far, what I've seen when I see it used is there's the cut and dried examples like I gave, and then there's other ones where, let's say some local governments worked together, came up with a plan, and went and talked to DOR and said, would this qualify? So it's more of a conversation with the grant providers on what would qualify or not. I can't say for sure. Because thank God I don't work for the state.
I'm Jennifer Strelo, I'm a Clintonville resident, also a member of CAST for the last 5 years. So I do understand of the three options. I understand what would happen with the fire rescue. I understand what would happen with going with a nonprofit or a private. What would that look like for our service of doing the full transfer to another local government? And how could that benefit us on our level with like possible retention benefits, stuff like that?
That's something that, what we wanted to make sure that we did not do at this point is to go down those avenues and start researching it at this point yet, because we wanted to talk to the group first. And we wanted to make sure that we did not make any decisions without first talking to the group. So and our full intent is that as soon as, after this, we're gonna hit the ground and start researching exactly that, what it would look like, what, potentially draw up some draft contract language on what would be acceptable for, to start those contract negotiations. At the same time, looking at what kind of services can we get from another provider and what would the cost be? And at the same time, looking at what it would look like to take it in-house. So I keep saying at the same time, only because I wanna make it very clear that, again, I cannot stress enough that Clintonville has not made up their mind on anything, and we wanna explore all of those options so that whatever we start going down is based on what research we found and not opinion or emotion.
Brandon Graydon, I'm a councilman for the city of Clintonville, I'm also on Clintonville Fire Department. I don't know if this might go to the last question or not, but if the service were to transfer from its current structure to, say, the city of Clintonville, city of Marion, any government entity directly that already is offering benefits, those employees that qualify would get those benefits like WRS, the health insurance, that sort of thing, provided they meet the state and municipalities' requirements to get those benefits, correct? There wouldn't be a reason they would be exempted from those benefits.
If we brought it in-house to, correct. And I, just to reiterate the question, wanna make sure that everybody heard it and we're all understanding it correctly, is let's say Clintonville did decide to bring ambulance service in-house and create a joint fire and EMS ambulance service, and then hired people in-house to provide that ambulance service, then those those employees would be eligible for all of the benefits and retirement and so forth as city employees, yes.
What is the approximated cost of doing it in-house? You gotta have some number to go with.
Actually, and again, we purposely have not explored that, because we wanted to have this discussion and then start looking at it. The only thing I'd say that we've done so far is is it even feasible? We reached out to Gold Cross, can you even do this? And we looked internally within our fire department, is this even possible? So the only thing we've done so far is to identify whether or not we do have three options. And to us, the answer on that is yes, right now it looks like we do have those three options, but we have no idea on, we really don't know what any of them look like at this point. We wanted to get direction from this group too, because, while ultimately we have to watch out for Clintonville and Clintonville residents, we're a group in this together, and, jurisdictional boundaries don't matter when somebody needs rescue. So we'd certainly like to work on stuff together, but ultimately, of course, we have to provide service to our residents. But that's why we wanted to do this first before we explored that, is because and also because we wanted to know, are we doing this as a group or are we doing Clintonville?
My name is Mark Schuster, I'm a supervisor for the town of Matson. And I guess first of all, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to find out where you're standing tonight and the information you did give us. But we obviously have not met with the town as a town yet, so anything I say is not necessarily what our town is going to agree to, because we just haven't had time to review all this and come to any kind of a position yet. But we got, and we can't, come to any decision until we get more information from you. What kind of time frame are you looking at? What do we do for service? Is service gonna be the same as it is now until you guys make a decision? And then what are we gonna use for service after we make a decision? What's gonna happen to all the assets that we paid a part on? You know, who's gonna get all those assets? What's gonna happen to all the employees that come up already? And again, I can't speak for the town, but I don't think that we would, be in favor of a combined fire ambulance service. We do not like the agreement we're in the fire department now. We don't think we get good representation there, so, I can't believe an ambulance fire department combined service would be good for our town.
One thing I wanna clarify, I'm glad that you brought that up, is when I say a combined fire and ambulance services, that's what it would be for providing services to Clintonville. And I would picture that would mean that then other communities have the option or not to either continue with the fire like you do now and then add in ambulance, or just ambulance, you know, one or the other. I'm not saying that, I don't think the intent is that you get both services or none from Clintonville. That would be further discussion. So I just wanna make that clear, is the combined thing is where it would be housed, how we would manage it, and you know, how services would be provided to Clintonville, but the rest would be a further discussion with how those services are provided to the community, other communities, if that's the way we go. And when I say we, in that case, I mean the group.
Well, I believe, Stephen Schenke, representative from San Marino. I've been on this commission for 33 years. This was originally set up, you keep saying contract.
Oh yeah, sure.
That's not a contract.
Intergovernmental agreement, correct.
Exactly.
Thank you, yes.
Contract is different than
Yep.
intergovernmental agreement.
I'm glad you pointed that out, thank you.
That's why things are different in there than you would look at in a contract. As far as signing, I believe, I don't have a record of it, but just before COVID, I think they were signed again. I think that was after 2016. Now, I know it says in there it's supposed to be reviewed and signed, and COVID messed up everything, and it's an oversight.
Oh yeah, and you know, and that's why when I was talking about that, I said it doesn't appear, I couldn't tell for sure, but it does not look like it's been overhauled or any, you know, I mean, it may have been signed every, you know, more often, but I got the impression from what I could see that there's not been changes to the agreement, thank you, agreement language from that earlier date.
That's very possible. I mean,
Oh, sorry,
You touched upon the grant, and
I'm sorry, I can't hear you at all.
You touched on the grant earlier, and you were giving the example with the city of Marion. So like, I'm the clerk for the town of DuPont. How does that affect us that have not already applied for that innovative grant? Would we still be eligible for it if that would happen? And then my second question is how does it impact, like, if the city of Clintonville did decide to withdraw, you know, and the city of Marion, you guys hold a lot of shares, and, you know, as far as the dollar value, I mean, what would that mean for the rest of our smaller municipalities as from a budgeting perspective? And do we have any figures or percentages on that you could share?
So the first question, in case you didn't hear, was regarding the grant, is that if any of the member communities were not part of that initial grant, would they also still be eligible for this, the second phase of this grant? Am I understanding correctly?
Correct.
And the answer is yes. The initial grant was just a planning grant, and actually there's no requirement on who's part of what. It's just that we did the study, we applied for that.
I'm
This is
referring to
actually
like
considered
the
an
25% example that you were giving.
Right, so you
Yeah.
absolutely, yes, you would be still eligible for it.
Okay.
It's not, they're not tied, they're within the same grant program, but you know, it's not one, you don't have to have this one in order to get that one. So absolutely, you would be eligible. The second question was if, like, as we had talked about that Marion and Clintonville have at this point given notice to withdraw, what that means for the rest of the members. And that's one of the concerns that we brought up as part of the agreement. I remembered this time, thank you for correcting me on that. Is that we don't know. And so that's a concern on it too. It's something that I think the whole, all of the membership should talk about, because that's an unknown. And same with the assets, you know, the operations, everything. If you have some communities withdraw, you know, you've got efficiency with, in larger, what's the word, economics of, what is the phrase I'm trying to think of? It's easier to provide or cheaper to provide services to a larger group. So the more group in it, the better, you know, to spread out the costs, and it's more efficient. So of course, when you have some withdraw and you have a smaller population, it costs more to provide services to that. So that's one of the concerns we've identified, but the answer is we don't have one, and neither does the agreement.
Do you have a schedule or a time frame in
No.
mind of how long before you make a decision on this?
We will be bringing this back to the city council, the outcome of, you know, kind of whatever we talk about here tonight, we'll bring back to city council to get their input. You know, when I was talking before about kind of buying a little bit of time, is, you know, one, we could either work on getting something in place and get it done, you know, whatever it may be, contract out elsewhere, revise the agreement, or bring it into, you know, internally with Clintonville. Another thing is if we can't, you know, and all of those things could happen pretty quickly. I mean, we will want to operate quickly, and get these, you know, this is gonna be it's not a marathon, it may end up being a sprint. But another option is, where I was talking about the buying time, is that maybe we put in place an interim contract for a, you know, 6-month period, extending what we have while we talk more. And I have not talked to city council yet at this point, because this has all been happening kind of fast, and frankly, I got thrown into the fire. But that's another thing that crossed my mind is, and I've done that before in a local government where we couldn't quite get to the end game and, you know, the end point, and didn't yet know where we were gonna go, so maybe extending something is just an option. But I think that's something that, based on what we leave here with tonight for a vibe, I guess you could say, on you know, if we're gonna be investigating this as just Clintonville, or if you're looking at us investigating it as, you know, some additional people, you know, groups, either way, we'll be moving quickly and having more conversation.
Darrell Hanson, City Council. I think what a lot of the people are worried about is not having the coverage. While we figure things out, are they gonna have the ambulance coverage until things are figured out?
I mean, at this point, I mean, it's not like the ambulance service is disbanding. You know, it's just we don't know, and that's where we got to start working. And, you know, the rest of the city council chime in at any time. We got a bunch of hands up.
Just for everybody's clarification, nothing changes until January 1. Absolutely nothing. You get the same service that you've had, that you've gotten for the last 25, 28 years. Services will remain exactly the same, regardless of the paperwork that's in play right now. So make sure your constituents know the ambulance is there, it's functioning exactly like it used to, and will continue. And as far as the financials, some people were concerned about that. Every month, the representative, each community has a representative at their city council. They get a packet every month that shows every dollar in, every dollar out. It is known exactly, right to the penny, every month where the ambulance sits financially. So that has never been a secret.
Representing the village of Embarrass, I just have a couple of questions. One is, we heard, Marion, their concerns. What are Clintonville's concerns? What specifically do they want to look for to change? And we heard, you know, we have contract change, we have those things. What specifically are we looking for?
Well, I'll say some, and then again, council, and anybody else that wants to, oh.
Greg Rose, Clintonville. Yes, to your point, I think that the city of Clintonville is looking here for options where we can stay together in a non-competitive way. Because to go back to your earlier words, you were looking for is economy of scale.
Thank you, that is exactly it.
And so if Clintonville and Marion are pulling out and going with other options, you're taking out two of the largest funding sources, and the current agreement with our ambulance service, I don't think would be financially sustainable for the remaining entities to try to do that and go it alone. And I think it would be ridiculous if we had two different ambulances running around the streets of Clintonville, some servicing us and some not. So I think what we need to look at here is coming to a way that we can take the old agreement and find new ways to rehab it and make it workable. As Diane said earlier, one of the things that I'm looking for is we need to have equal vote ability based upon population, which was one of the things that was flagged in the study. The fact that we have so much of the population, but only one vote on the commission is definitely something that we would hope could get reworked. You know, there are other things that Diane pointed out in there, and it's my hope that we can find ways to rehab this agreement and make it work. If we have to go down those other options of Plan B and Plan C, there's a lot more question marks there versus what we already know with the entity that we have. We know what that is, and we probably have ways that we can make it better.
My name is Mary, and I've been the nurse with the Clintonville Area Ambulance Service for the last 20 years. In 1993, I was one of the last nurses to walk out of the doors at the Clintonville Hospital. And what that meant was that, with the loss of the hospital, that the area ambulance had to transport 15 to 20 miles either direction. I saw the impact that had on the residents, with oftentimes loss of life and complications because of those longer rides. Since the closure of that, the community has stepped up with the EMS service, with elevating the levels of paramedics, your EMTs, your increase of the people. They increase the knowledge base tremendously. Now the talent of these people have become like an ER on wheels. And I'm very, very proud of what the service has done for that, to provide the service for the area communities. I would hate to see that loss. I would hate to see a combination of fire department and the ambulance service. I could never do their job because of the expertise and the physical ability, and I don't think they could do this service's job because of what it requires and the in-depth of training. They're an expert at what they do. This group from the ambulance service is an expert at what they do.
If I could make a point of clarification, is when I talk about that, we're not talking about having the firefighters doing, you know, we're talking about hiring paramedics. You know, so not having, you know, we're not talking about.
And I think that's clarity that needs to be provided, because that's not the impression that I was getting. And I agree wholeheartedly with Greg about working together and making some revisions, not losing what we have in both of these services, and I would hate to see another service come in when we already have it established here, and they're excellent at what they do. Utilize the talent that you have here and revise that agreement and provide a lot of clarity and a lot of understanding to the people. And if I was a resident of those municipalities that withdrew from the current agreement, and if there were not multiple meetings on that, hey, we're thinking of doing this, we haven't done it yet, but we want your opinion. If there were not multiple meetings to really get the input of those residents, that's a disservice, I feel, to those residents that have no clue about this meeting or what's going on.
And one other point of clarification too is that nobody has withdrawn yet. I noticed 2 withdraw, saying that because the agreement requires that if there's, basically if at the end of the year there is that decision made, we had to provide that notice July 1st. So just want to clarify that.
What needs to be clarified according to the paper, what was it? I think there was a lot of misinformation in that article.
Just kind of coming in a little bit here from the perspective that I don't think many people get the opportunity to see, because most people aren't on Clintonville Ambulance or on Clintonville Fire or other area fire departments. We respond to calls as needed. Everyone except for the ambulance service is volunteer on the fire side. On the ambulance side, there's full-time employees, there's part-time employees. But one thing I've noticed in the 11 years that I've been a member of the Clintonville Fire Department is that when I first started under the fire department, there was always, and maybe my memory is bad because I was new to the area and maybe I'm seeing things differently than what was reality, but what I saw was 2 ambulances, one in Clintonville, one in Marion. Each one had a paramedic staffed every day. Over that time period, we've slowly gone from having 2 fully staffed paramedic units every day, 24/7, 365, to all of a sudden, oh, we don't have enough paramedics to staff the Marion rig. So now Marion's not a paramedic rig, paramedics gotta come from Clintonville. To, oh, now we don't have enough people to even fully staff the Marion rig. And now we're running into issues where now the Marion rig is sitting empty on a regular basis. Just this last weekend alone, I think Shawano Ambulance got requested 3 times to the city of Clintonville, not because both Clintonville and Marion ambulances were on separate calls, but because they were on the same call, because they're required to have a paramedic there if the paramedic's available, and they have to have that paramedic. I can't speak to the exact way it all works, but it's not that there was multiple calls going on, it's that there was calls going on regularly enough that I was taking both the ambulances out of service at the same time for the same call. The people that work on the ambulance, I feel like we have really great working relationships with. They're professionals, they know what they're doing, they do a really hard job that a lot of people don't fully understand or appreciate. But the number of employees, with, specifically with Clintonville, has gone down dramatically over the last 11 years. And there's lots of reasons for it, but for some reason it's happening, and that's putting more and more burden on the volunteer fire departments. Just in the last half dozen years, Clintonville, Embarrass, and Marion have all added EMR services to their fire department, and there might be others, I just know those 3 for sure off the top of my head. And no matter what way we move forward, we've got to figure out how are we going to staff these ambulances and staff them in a way that's acceptable for all the member municipalities.
I was asked to make a statement, not as the whole from my service members, but just as a few of them to our board and everybody and all of our constituents, our communities. It's a scary time, but we just wanted you guys to know that we have such an amazing rapport with fire, such an amazing rapport with our first responders and our police department. no matter what's going on right now, you are gonna get the same quality of service that we've always strived for. We never want that to change. And we appreciate, like they said, there's stuff that we could never do on a fire side. We love working with our fire. We had so many things this weekend, we couldn't get through it without them, honestly. And that's why we work so well together. Just a follow-up question, a thing that I would really encourage a lot of people, and we could probably provide that information, I don't wanna speak for my management here, but there are protocols that we follow by the state. The comment of having our 2 rigs tied up, what's really happening, if I can just very quickly touch on this. Marion gets called out to a call, and yes, there might not be a paramedic on it, but we are always an ALS service, advanced life service. We never run basic trucks. So you always have what's required. If the medic is available, they are running silent. There is a reason for that. If other calls come in, we can quick move to how we need to move. So according to the state, whether our medic is tied up or not, we're still following the requirements that are given to us by the state and our government entities. You have ALS coverage. Also what happens a lot is we do have to use our mutual aid quite a bit, and that's what we're all here for. We mutual aid with Manawa, with Tigerton, with Iola, with Shawano quite a bit. And sometimes it's not a matter of something that we can't handle. It's just a matter of, you know, my medic's out, we've got blessings on this, and this for this call. However, I do need a certain type of medication maybe. So I am gonna call in another medic to help us do that. But we've never had a miss. That's another clarification I wanted to bring out. People are worried about the coverage and the staffing and stuff. A miss is clarified as a 911 call that has never been answered. That has never happened. We have protocols for a reason on the ambulance. If our rigs are out, comm center knows to directly talk to us, and we will get the next mutual aid going. That is what mutual aid is for. We have never missed any 911 calls in our service here.
Hi, my name is Jim Rogalski. I've been with Clintonville Ambulance for 3 years, full-time, when I retired from teaching. I have 18 years as an advanced EMT, part-time with Washira County. I don't know if anybody's aware of this or looking at the news, there's a nationwide, statewide shortage of EMS and hospital for people. Not just EMS and the ambulance, go to a hospital. We transfer patients all the time, not because they don't have a bed, because they don't have staff to manage the people in the hospital, and you're not shutting down hospitals right now. I work for Washira County. They run 5,000 calls a year. They have 4 stations. I checked back in July to see what's going on this month. Over 4 days, because some days are half, they have shut down 1 station. They're only running 3 stations. And they run 5,000 calls a year. I went back to June. They have over 10 full days where they shut down a station. Plus more days where they only had 1 personnel running. That's Washira County and Will County. I gave Cliff an article today, and if you want, you can find it. It's from Wisconsin Public Radio. They did a report, Bayfield County. Bayfield County is in deep doo-doo. They don't know what to do with their ambulances. There were times that they had to call 6 different services before they could find one to do mutual aid. And they don't have people there. They dropped 6% of their calls last year, where people did just nobody showed up for the call. Period. We did not do that. You may say we're abandoning a town, or we're not there. This is nothing new. It's going to happen, and it's going to get worse. Because you're trying to find and recruit people to do a job that requires them to go to school, get continuing education, job that doesn't pay insurance. We get $300 a month full time as our insurance, of which we have to pay taxes on. We could go to Quick Trip and make more money starting out at Quick Trip than you can as a basic EMT and an advanced EMT, and then continue on. So it's probably going to get worse And you got the best people working on this right now. And if you wanna take a look at this and you wanna compare what's going on, not even giving the service a fair chance to come up with a plan to make this work. Just, we're gonna leave. That sounds like personality conflict to me. You could have come up with a plan and said, and all these things you're saying are perfect. Let's come up with this. Let's see what this, let's renegotiate the agreement. That makes sense. But to give this all up, go to WPR, look at Bayfield. I also go on Facebook, I mean, that's much of crap, we all know too, but go to Arkansas. There's groups of EMTs in Arkansas. They don't know what to do. There's counties just shut down. I have no idea what to do. And this is happening all over the country. So you got a good service here, and the other services around here are great too. You know, there's other services around here that are just wonderful. But we can only do with so much we have, and so much with the people. You don't have young people coming into this, because this is a tough job. You know, there's moments of boredom, and there's moments of complete terror. And to say that an ambulance is not, supporting a town, okay. You may have to wait in Marion for an ambulance to come from Clintonville because the ambulance is out in Marion. But you may have to wait in Clintonville because the ambulance has to come from Marion to Clintonville. And that's mutual aid, and that's all that happens. And we have other towns, so if you're saying that you're gonna put a new ambulance in Marion because you don't wanna wait for Clintonville, what happens when that ambulance is out? Are you gonna put 2 ambulances in Marion? What happens if, Marion needs somebody when they need mutual aid? Or someone calls on Marion, are you gonna stop giving mutual aid to those other communities? But it's only okay for you to take the mutual aid coming into your town? Hey, we need help, we're shorthanded, we're gonna call you. But don't call us, because we don't have to, because we wanna make sure that we're covered and protected. And I wish I could say that we could schedule in all the calls. I guarantee you there's times that we have 4 calls within 5 minutes. And what do? You roll the dice. And with that happening, 4 calls in 5 minutes, or a car accident requires two ambulances to go to, you call mutual aid. And with all of that that's happening, and all the middle of the night calls, and all the old ladies who need to get up because they slipped and they want to stay in their homes, rather than be stuck in a nursing home, I don't know. We've never missed a call. Even if we had to call mutual aid, we never missed a call. So I think you need to consider that and talk to your people about that. And this is available, and who wants to look at this article, or just go to WPR.
I guess I'll speak a little bit. I'm Brad Rokas from the City of Clintonville. I don't think anyone from the City of Clintonville, and I'll make an assumption for Marion, is trying to disparage the efforts, the expertise, and the, I guess, it's your calling. No one's trying to disparage what you do or how you do it. Personally, I have more questions on the transparency of the governance of the Clintonville Area Ambulance Service than I do about those that are working for the Clintonville Area Ambulance Service. I don't know how we're gonna move forward, but in my understanding, by issuing the intent to withdraw, it allows us to have these conversations that we weren't having before because we weren't able to have them before. And I think there's a little bit of a lack of transparency from the, I don't know if it's a lack of transparency or just difficulty getting information that we need when we need it and to be able to have answers to move forward. This seemed to be an opportunity after the initial grant as a catalyst to be able to have these conversations and to be able to promote having these conversations open and honestly, and being able to discuss some of these hard issues and hard topics as it relates to the ambulance. I don't think we're gonna come up with all the answers and have it all right no matter which direction we go, but it's giving us an opportunity to find out some information that we didn't have before and to maybe look at ways to improve it moving forward, however that shakes out. not that I wanna see the city of Clintonville take on the expense of running their own ambulance service, but from an employment standpoint, being a part of a municipality and having WRS retirement benefits, potentially competitive municipal wages, and health benefits does go a long way for recruitment and retention. That doesn't mean there aren't other tripping hazards along that way. So I don't think we're sitting here as a city looking like we're secretly want option, I'm gonna go option E because there was only 3 up there, so I'm not calling them no. No, yeah, this is our opportunity to have the discussion and to find answers and uncover more issues that we'll have to have more questions on and continue that discussion. I was only on the ambulance service board for just a year. At times it was difficult to get answers. It was difficult to necessarily understand the answers you got because, well, I'm not a medical professional or a routine member of that committee. But this, in my mind, is an opportunity for all communities to be able to look at the agreement with wide eyes and figure out what is the best and most appropriate steps for all moving forward.
I'm Doug Bank from the town of Red Creek, member of the ambulance commission board for nearly 20 years. And my disappointment in this is that no municipality has ever come to our meeting in the last 10 years that I know of and says, hey, we need to renegotiate the agreement. I have not heard a complaint. Is anybody else? No. So this throwing this at us here 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, that was just boom, it left us with a kind of a pit in our gut that, hey, what happened? And the mayor was on the committee last year or two, and so she knows what we're talking about. She knows that the financial reports were there every month, and whether she reported them or Tom or Brendan or Greg or whoever was on before, whether they gave those to the full city council every month, that's not my deal, but I know our town board got some response on that on a regular basis. So it's just, people have been on the commission before the past, they have to be truthful to it too, and if they weren't, the council or the village or the township boards weren't happy, it was up to them to come and give a statement saying, hey, we would like to see something change in our agreement, and that hasn't come up in the last 10 years that I know of, so.
Well, if I could just interject, is I will kind of go back to the study and I'm just interim administrator, I'm very new to Clintonville, but as I came in this, it was right when that study was released. And so, and from what I could tell, there wasn't any burning concern or anything really, until it was more, things started unfolding. And, as the study came out and the reports on it is where that started prompting more questions that maybe, and I'm speaking, from my understanding is that I feel like that prompted questions, and that's kind of where it started rolling and getting more momentum is not that, it was like, oh, the sky is falling. It was just like, we didn't realize that there were, this group that did this study identified some areas to investigate further and some concerns, and so that's why you didn't hear it 10 years ago, is because it was, as we studied, put together this study to find, just look into it, if that's a fair statement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as those questions came up, I think are eye-opening, and if we are to proceed and get the answers to those questions and at that point go, well, this isn't for us anymore because of what the answers we're getting, we had to file that paperwork by July 1st. We've done that, and as we progress and get those answers and go, okay, there's less here than what it looked like, we're good, or there's these other tweaks that we want to make with the agreement, we're still able to. But if we were to miss the July 1st deadline, still progress down the path of getting the answers to the questions that we wanted and realize that, holy cow, there's areas here that we as a city aren't content with. We were there for another year. We wanted to be able to still get those answers and then make that decision with all options available, whether or not this is where we want to be or not want to be. And if we had passed past that July 1st deadline, we wouldn't have all options available to us.
Richard Britsky from the Town of Grant, just right out of Marion, City of Marion. Been here 28 years, I've been on their commission that long. Really no complaints from our township here of the service they have out there. EMTs come in from Marion, there's a few that took the class and they're supporting the Town of Grant when the ambulance does get there. One thing I'm gonna bring up, I'm gonna use this, 5-6 years ago, we had a bad explosion. I live a quarter mile down the road. Some people should remember that up here. There's 3 people died out of that, but the service that the Clintonville Ambulance Service gave with the community background and also mutual aid from Tigerton, and I know Cliff, I don't know if Shauna was in there, but that was a serious thing out there. And I still can't get over today yet. So Clinton Ambulance Service was super in my book at that time. They did really well out there. So it was a catastrophe, but I tell you, when shoes on that foot, when something happens, you dig down to the belly and then you get out there and help those people. That's all I got to say.
I'd just like to address a couple things with transparency. Like I say, finance, every month, everything is there, what comes in, what we have in accounts, everything is there. So there's no question about hiding any finances, it's there. Also, number of calls, there's a report that goes out at the end of the year. Which communities had, it broke down as to this many calls in the city of Clintonville, this many calls here, this many calls there. That every year. I mean, you can't do it before that because you'd be writing reports steady. So the transparency's there. And as far as coverage, I don't care where you go. I've been involved in EMS many years. I retired a while back, but everybody is having the same problem. Can't get enough paramedics, can't get enough personnel. We're trying to cover it the best we can. And like I said, we have not missed a call. Every call has been taken. I know of places that calls do not get answered in the state of Wisconsin. That doesn't happen here.
Greg Clintonville again. And that's why I believe that the state came out with the innovation grant in the first place. So we don't all become Bayfields. And so we're looking here, we have small fires. You know, we want to put those small fires out now. So we look at our staff at the ambulance. Is there a way that we could increase the staffing? That's what this innovation grant is partly studying here. So it's not only just the agreement that may need a little reworking, but how can we get our staff to stick around or get more staff or better compensate them? All of those things so that we aren't half-staffed or limited on the couple rigs that we do have. And we can go back to what Brandon was talking about when we had more staff than we do now. So, I mean, it's not gonna be a silver bullet, but can we find ways to bring in a little bit more staff and retain them and compensate them so we can improve the services that we have to get it back to the way that it used to be?
Well, I'd like to interject here. The way it used to be years ago, when I started, everything was volunteer. The service was made up, probably at least 95% of the people that were on the service was in the area. Now, you do not have that. I don't know if there's even 5% of the people that's in the area. So you're bringing people from all over, which creates a lot of problems too, because of the fact they're not familiar with the area. They gotta rely on directions from whatever, slows down calls. I mean, they do a great job with their medical, but they're not familiar with the area and our conditions. And as far as, it would be great if we had enough money to throw out there and we'd hire 50 people. But the money ain't there. So.
I think you read from.
I just, Chris from the city of Marion again, I feel like a few comments were probably targeted at us, so I'll just reply. With all due, this has nothing to do with the employees of the Clintonville Ambulance Service. The reason we chose to withdraw. A, you had to let them know by July 1st. Otherwise, you were stuck for another year. So we had to do that. Second, with all due respect to Bayfield, Washera County, the rest of the state of Wisconsin, my elected responsibility is for the constituents in the city of Marion, Wisconsin. That's where my duty lies. We're not getting the services that we're supposed to get based on the agreement that we have. I understand you haven't missed a call, but when I hear from a constituent that they had to sit there and wait for 10 minutes for a paramedic to come from Clintonville while they had to sit there and wait, that's not what we're paying for. And that's not the services we're supposed to get. No disrespect to anybody sitting up there at that table, but we're not doing something right. We're not getting the representation that we're supposed to get. And I know a lot of you gentlemen and ladies have been up there 28 years, 15 years, 20 years, you've sat on this commission. It's not what it used to be. So what we're not doing something we need to be doing differently with this commission to get the bodies that we need, because there's other ambulance services out there that are fully staffed. Why are people getting hired here and leaving? What are those questions being asked and answered? I personally know we've had firefighters that have worked here, volunteer firefighters for the city of Marion that worked for the ambulance service, that left and went to work for another ambulance service. It ain't all about money. Something's broken in the system. And that's why we're choosing to leave, because our constituents are not getting the representation that they're paying for. Do I want to walk away from all the assets that we've invested in? No, but that's money spent, and if that's what we have to do, then that's what we have to do. And to answer the question, if we didn't have a meeting and meetings are posted, the ambulance service discussion was on more than one meeting in the city of Marion. If those people don't come to the meetings, that's on them. We had lots of discussions. It was a difficult decision for us to make to withdraw, but it needed to be made by July 1st so that we had options available to us. I got a hell of a lot better things to do on a Thursday night at 7:15 than sit in this room. I do not get paid enough to go through all the stuff that we've had to go through. That's not why you do this. But something's broken in this system. And we had to explore other options, and that's what we're doing as a community. I don't blame Cliff, I don't blame any of the employees. I'm sure, I don't know most of you, I'm sure you're great employees. But there's not enough of you, and we're not getting the services that we're supposed to get. If Clintonville can make it work, and somehow make it work, more power to you. We're ready to go another direction in Marion. If that's what we gotta do, then that's what we gotta do, because that's what our citizens deserve. Because they're not getting what they deserve right now, with that ambulance being parked there. Shame on all of us. I've sat on council from 2017 before I got elected mayor 3 years ago. I didn't ask enough questions of this commission. I didn't do enough investigating. I didn't do enough digging. But what we found now is we're not getting the services we deserve and we're paying for. And something has to change. Whatever that is, if it's option A, B, or C. We want to be part of the solution. We want to recoup some of the assets because we've spent a lot of capital funds and all that type of stuff. But we're going to get better ambulance service, whether it's from the Clintonville Ambulance Service, whether it's from the Clintonville Fire and EMS Department, or whether it's from somebody else. Because that's what our citizens deserve.
Joe Vandenberg, I live in Clintonville. I'm a former employee of CAS. To answer the inevitable question, for me it was pay and insurance, but that's not why I'm here. My question is if the fire department takes it over 5 years from now, that grant runs out, who's gonna pay for it? A number of departments got grants during COVID to increase staffing, and those communities are now struggling. Weston voted to not give the fire department more money, and they had to lay off firefighters. Wausau voted to increase taxes so that they could keep the staff that they added. To add to what Mary said, in my experience, I have been a paramedic for almost 35 years. It takes 2 to 3 years full-time for a paramedic to be competent, 4 to 5 years part-time. It's kind of like getting your motorcycle license. The motorcycle school teaches you how to ride a motorcycle. It doesn't teach you how to do it proficiently. You need experience to do that. To expand on, and I'm sorry I did not get your name, but to expand on the mutual aid issues. Working at County Rescue in the last month, I have run mutual aid calls in Pulaski, City of Schwabenau multiple times, City of Howard, City of De Pere, Seymour, and that's just me. It's a common thing as EMS services get busier and busier, it's going to happen more and more. It happens. You guys have a proficient ambulance service, work with them. Oh, and staffing. I'd say about once a week, I get Facebook messages that are paid for by fire departments, local fire departments, City of Green Bay, City of De Pere, City of Kaukauna, Howard, looking for staffing. We pay $80,000 a year for paramedics, whatever. You know, these people would not be paying for Facebook advertising if they were able to staff their trucks. You're going to be competing with these full-time departments looking for staff.
Shane Krieger, Fire Chief for Clintonville Fire Department. I just want to comment that the Clintonville Fire Department is not looking to run an ambulance service. Clintonville Fire Department is here to be a fire department and to support EMS through the actions of our EMR program, which involves the townships that we also serve as a fire department, because there wasn't first responders in those townships. And there was many times when the ambulance service was not available because they're out on other calls. One thing that I didn't hear said, and I've learned this through taking a break from being on the ambulance service and then coming back and having to relicense and learn again all of what's changed in EMS. And one of the biggest changes that was hard for me to get my head around is the fact that, just like Mary said, because I was on the service when that happened, when the hospital closed, we used to take that patient and drive 20 miles to Shawano or New London. That isn't what happens today, and it's not because of the lack of that ability of that hospital. It's because they're being told and trained to take the patient where it's best fit. So they might be transporting to Neenah. So now that transport went from 20 minutes to an hour. And that's leaving more and more gaps in why all of this EMS services are being added, why the fire department is responding to more calls to assist the ambulance service. But what I did see from this study, because it involved the fire department and I had to participate in that as well, to do my part as a fire department. I know there was a comment made that they're disappointed in the fire service that's provided by Clintonville, and I'd love to have greater conversation on what the problems are, because I think as a fire chief, I feel like I do my best, and I think all of my firefighters do a damn good job of providing services to our townships and the city of Clintonville equally. I'm a fire chief for more than just the city of Clintonville. I'm a fire chief for multiple townships. So that being said, I look at the study, and the study says if you can find a way to structure, I personally don't believe that the Clintonville ambulance service contract can't be restructured in a fashion outside of just the fire department to structure to give an entity like the city of Clintonville, for example, city of Marion, somebody that has WRS, has insurance. Why is the Clintonville ambulance service having to find their own insurance and their own benefits and work out on an island because it was done that way 25 plus years ago? I've heard the people make their comments. There's great people working here. There's also statements that I left for benefits and wages as part of that. So I employ all of these townships to work with the city of Clintonville to come up with a way to seek after these funds if it's going to help propel the Clintonville ambulance service personnel to have better benefits so they can hire people and retain them. Because yes, there is an issue with retaining employees and having good employees and having those paramedics. So work together, restructure, work on the contract, do what you have to do, so that we have the employees that can stick around and not just live somewhere 40 miles away. Because strangely enough, all of our fire departments are made up of people that live in our community. So if you could give them a job and give them the benefits, they'll stick around. So I just wanted to make that comment. Then again, and everybody walks out of here and I'm hearing the comment over and over that the fire department wants to take over the ambulance service. We're not in that business, but we're in the business to do what you guys ask us to do. And if you ask us to be involved in that, we'll do what we have to do to help out. But I also know that our fire personnel are running 300% more calls, and I give that report every year to everybody on how many more calls we're going on. We're getting call fatigue too, and we're volunteers. So what's gonna happen, as it is across the nation, you're gonna start having to pay for the fire service too. So work together, take advantage of an opportunity where the state's handing some money, format, and let's get this done instead of arguing about why we're here. Thank you.
Just to add what Shane said about the quality of calls. We're an EMS service, and the E stands for emergency. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, that's what the calls were. Now people don't have insurance. They call us for a stub toe, and I'm just being generic about that. Middle of the night, whatever, I need to go to the doctor. I've had people come up, wait a second, I gotta get my laundry, because I'm getting a ride to town. Because they have no cars.
With their bags
Out
packed.
sitting in the front lawns with their bags packed, ready to go. So this service, the reason we're getting all these extra calls, and we're on shorthand, people can't afford to go to the doctor. You look at the edema, the diabetes we have, the elderly population who don't want to go into nursing homes. They want to stay at home to that second that they die. And then we know they're going to die because we've been to their house 4 times in the last month. You know, we're just taking them to hospice. They're on hospice. What do? We don't take them to the hospital because they're on hospice. They're home to die. Guess what? We go there, hospice says take them to the hospital. And we do. And we smile, we tell them we're here for them, and we're going to take care of them. They're not emergency calls. They're not emergency calls because, you know, somebody got a knee and their parents don't know how to take care of needs straight. You know, I said I was a teacher. We had 7th grade graders, the PE class in 7th grade had a bicycle program. Over half the kids couldn't ride a bike in 7th grade. I don't know about you, but I was way before 7th grade when I was riding a bike. My knee was skinned all the time. You know, and if somebody got cut, you know, they're calling an ambulance for that. When we get out there, we're not going to transport them. Okay? Parents don't want to go to the hospital. They just wanted us to look at it because they don't have confidence in themselves. They haven't been taught to do this stuff. They don't have the insurance to take care of it, so they want to make sure that their kid's okay because they're panicking. I don't know what the percentage of our calls are, but it's 25, 30, 40% of our calls are just BMS, not instead of EMS, so, sorry.
Neil Ashenbrunner, just a concerned citizen. The gentleman from the town of Matson asked you twice, and you went around the question both times. What is the projected time frame on this? Is it a month? Is it 3 months? Is it 6 months? Is it a year?
We don't know. I mean, because right now, this was just, we had to provide the notice if we wanted to look into this, and so now at this point is where we need to start looking into, you know.
Okay, so why did you have to provide the notice? What regulated you that you had to give notice in order to do the research on this?
No, the agreement, it's not that we had to give notice to do the research, it's that we had to give the notice to not have the contract, or excuse me, the agreement automatically renew. And frankly, we didn't want to do the research in advance about here's option A, B, and C without talking to the group. And
but you could talk to the group without giving the notice.
Yes, but we didn't have the information until the study got done.
Correct, but why did you need to give notice if you have no projected time frame? What if your research takes a year?
Then we don't withdraw. I mean, this was just a notice of intent. It's not committing us.
So why give the notice at all
And then my last question is.
So that we're not stuck in it for, we're not in the same
haven't
agreement
done
for another
your
year.
research. So, and then what happens come January first, if you're not done with your research?
As the gentleman said here before, I forgot who it was, that, the ambulance service continues.
Continues until January first.
No,
Mr. Peterson, what did you say earlier?
Nothing changes
until January first.
Until January 1.
right, and if Clintonville does not withdraw, then Clintonville still gets the service after January 1, until January 1 of the following year.
I think you should have had this meeting before you even gave the notice. You should have done your research before you gave the notice, and then you should have had all of this information together to present to the citizens of Clintonville, Marion, Matson, DuPont. What was the point?
And maybe some think that would have been the way. It's just the concern and I'm speaking as somebody who's been in local government for most of my career, all of my career, is that I wouldn't want to be doing research behind the scenes that impacted everybody else, and then have it be like, oh my gosh, they're looking at Gold Cross, or they're looking at doing their own department. I would want to get in front of that instead of behind
You
it.
could have been very transparent if you're doing the research and you were considering giving notice, but you just gave notice.
Again, I would
just got the innovation.
I was saying, yeah, if you wanna.
We gave notice, say our research only takes 2 months and we decide this is the direction we have to go, and we didn't give notice. Now we're another year. The research may take longer than January 1st, but if it doesn't, we would be stuck for another year.
Okay, you guys have all been on boards and in government. Can anybody up there tell me that you have even the slightest inclination that this is only gonna take 2 months and not 2 years?
Yes.
So what do you project for a time frame?
I think it's entirely possible that we could have a plan in place by the end of the year. It's just, we don't know which avenue that's going to be. As I mentioned before, I mean, we did some initial looking on do we even have options? And, are the 3 options that we identified feasible? The answer to that is that, yes, those options are feasible. Now we're gonna start digging into okay, what does that look like?
Okay. I made my point. You guys jumped the gun on that. Just one statement to Marion here. Initially, he said that it was about service and lack of transparency from the ambulance service. But obviously, the ambulance service is being ran correctly and is transparent. They are providing Marion and everybody else the opportunity to read all the financial statements and everything else. They were just looking for a way out.
That's your opinion.
Exactly, it is.
To add to what he said, now we have employees that are wondering if they're gonna have a job after the first of the year.
Talk about retention.
None of them are gonna want, they may have 1 or 2 employees that wanna cross over to the fire side, but they don't wanna be a firefighter. I don't wanna be a firefighter, it's not for me, I would've done it 30 years ago if I wanted to do that. All the props to those guys, I'm not gonna be running into burning buildings anytime soon.
They're not gonna be either.
Yes, Greg.
So I guess you guys have to come to a collective decision of, do you wanna work together or do you wanna butt heads? Because some of you guys in the back wanna butt heads, and that's not gonna help the collective. We need the economy of scale, we need municipalities on board, we need to have our representatives that work there and our constituents that pay for them to all be on the same page. And I don't think everybody in the room is willing to be on the same page, and that disappoints me. I hope that you can work together.
I think this gentleman.
Suggestions on where hey, I hear all this with the transparency, all this, I can't see where we haven't been transparent to start with. And secondly, statement just lately made that you don't know how long you're gonna be there. And it's not, you're gonna be there in the next year. In the meantime, what does our ambulance service do to put a budget together, not knowing whether you're there or not? That's my first question. Then we're gonna be getting, you talked about a contract. Further, it's not a contract, it's a 66 agreement that we've all agreed to for years. And, as you say that, you're saying, well, you're not happy with it. You have not brought nothing to the table in reality. Other than the fact you think you're paying too much. That's what I got gathered on. You're not paying any more than the rest of us. We're paying by our population in a township, or cities, or villages. That's the way it is. You haven't brought a real, answer to us as why you're really unhappy and why you wanna leave. You're thinking to save money, and why don't you just say it that way? You haven't come up with a clear solution why you want to.
The innovation grant flagged a number of things, and those were listed on the slide. Those were the things listed on the slide. It was representation. Clintonville is the majority, yet we're only one vote. That's the one I referenced that I would like to see in a rehab agreement. Okay, that's only one. There are others. Financial transparency, some claim it's out there and everything's open book, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's a little more gray than that. And I don't know, but is there ways that we could make this agreement work for everybody where it's happy by everybody?
Well,
And I think that that's doable, and I think we can have a meeting of the minds and come together and hash out a new rework agreement in the next 6 months.
And I would say too, is a lot of this discussion further highlights some of the concerns that we brought up, is that, like, one, there's no understanding of what happens when somebody withdraws. So this isn't, we didn't sign, we're not blood brothers, we didn't sign this for the rest of our lives. So there's gotta be something in there, some kind of agreement or, somewhere in it on what happens when somebody withdraws. That was one of them, and I'm trying to think of, there's another one too, but sorry, it kind of escapes my mind.
You say there's nothing withdrawal, it's no different than our fire contract with the city of Clintonville. If we leave, we lose everything. So what is the difference? What is the complaint?
I'm talking about, for one thing, I don't, at least from Clintonville's perspective, we haven't complained. Oh, well, other than, I guess you could say that we have one vote.
That way today.
If I may, part of the issue is, for one question that I don't have answered, is when was you said, the financials, we get a report every month. When was the last time there was a full-blown financial audit by an outside entity that was published for all the members? For two, the attitudes, at times, and this happens to be one of those times, can feel quite adversarial from the board to the municipalities. My goal is to work together to have the best ambulance service that we can all possibly have together. But as the largest entity, it's like the House versus Senate. Do you get one representative per district, or do you have a representation based on your population? And I feel that at times, with being one of the largest entities, it feels that we're not getting as much cooperation as what we should get. Not that we should get any more than anybody else, as far as cooperation goes. But there are times that the attitude feels very negatively towards the city, where we're not getting the answers in a fashion, an expedient fashion.
I think we've got.
We just want to be able to have these discussions to see how we can improve it. It's not about us leaving the ambulance service high and dry. It sounds like Marion has made their decision and they're pulling out. That alone raises more questions that we need to have discussions to work together to be able to keep the ambulance service moving forward with losing one of the communities. I don't think we want to leave, we just want to improve the service, and now there's a major factor that's changing the dynamics of the service, and we need to work together to try to figure out how we're all gonna move forward with that change.
To be clear, we didn't wanna withdraw either, but when you're not getting the services your constituents are paying for, you need to explore your options, just like you do with any other, if you had a contract, I'm sorry, you had an agreement with an electrician, and he wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing, you would explore other electricians. We have insurance that we provide, or our liability insurance, we shop around every year. We're doing our due diligence for our constituents. Do we wanna leave? No. If we were getting the coverage that we were supposed to be getting, we would not even be having these discussions. And is our mind made up? No, we would be happy to go, if we can move forward with one of those three options and it works well for our constituents and we have insurances and we have a better agreement that's reviewed every couple of years. A lot of us are in fire contracts with each other. Those are reviewed signed every 3 years, and we go through them. But we have some of the same issues there as well, that we have one vote, but we pay 50% of our fire agreement with other municipalities. Is that the right thing to do? I don't know. I understand where they're coming from, where they don't want us ramming something down your throat when you only have 3% of the, but you want equal representation. So something has to change, and it should have changed probably a long time ago, and shame on all of us that have been around for a while for not seeking that change sooner. So, but no, we filed notice to leave because we had to. And then we did, to your comment, we did our due diligence, and we brought in outside services, and we interviewed them, and we got quotes from them, and we said, hey, what can you provide for us? So that we had options come January 1st. So that's the boat we're sitting in. Would this has worked for a lot of years, but something's not going on that's working now, because we're not keeping staff, we're not fully staffed, and we're way off of what I think you guys wanted to do with this meeting tonight,
Right.
and I apologize if I drove us down that path.
And I feel like we're just rehashing the same
Yes.
stuff,
just
and we're
going
not
round
making
and
any more
round.
progress, so.
Yeah, we're not making any progress. I would like to see that we can all get together and have a discussion to reevaluate the agreement. Because this isn't working as it is.
No, I mean, now we're to the point where we're just repeating,
Right,
saying the
it's
same
just the same
thing.
thing over and over again. And I don't know how we can proceed to do this agreement, to revisit it, and it would entail all the municipalities getting together that are involved.
Well, and for, and what I was gonna be talking to Clintonville, council next week on is, moving forward on the three options, is that, excuse me, from Clintonville's perspective, I am going to suggest to them that, one, we start drafting some of the terms that we would be looking for in a revised agreement. So for the one option, for the second option, that we would start looking at other providers, and the third option of what it would look like to bring it in-house. So those are the three options that we said from the beginning that we looked at to see on whether or not they were even options for us. And now moving forward to look at what that actually looks like. So that's what I was gonna be bringing to the council next week, and then get direction from them towards staff on how they want us to proceed to start doing the research on what that looks like. Those communities that wanna be a part of that, reach out.
Shouldn't you guys as the commission or whatever, if you wanna tweak the agreement, we're the member owners, you're our representatives, shouldn't you tweak that agreement and bring it back to our councils and say, here's how we wanna tweak that agreement? So that would be my 2 cents on how to start this, is the 8 people sitting up there, what do we got, 11 voting members? That this is the agreement that you agree upon, because this is what we wanna tweak and bring back to us. And then it's up to our councils to sign that agreement or not sign that agreement.
Well, and I guess my thought is that typically, before you start tweaking agreement, it's hearing from your members who the other parties are in the agreement on what it is that they're looking for, and then work for that language,
But I think you've heard some of that tonight, that there's stuff that needs to be, your members are right there in front of you, with you, And maybe that's part of the problem with this, to your point, you're not having those discussions as a committee, that they're not, if somebody's got, That's my 2 cents.
All right, well, thank you again for coming, everybody.
I just have one quick question for clarification. I've heard repeatedly that you wanna bring the ambulance in-house. And that, but it's not going to be fire that's doing this, so can you give us a picture of what that looks like? So the firefighters are not gonna be paramedics, and the paramedics are not gonna be firefighters, so how is this gonna get brought in-house? Do you have a picture of what this looks like?
Hiring paramedics.
From where?
Again, we haven't gotten to that first, and, you know, at that point, that's what we're looking into. No, we are, frankly, we're done because we're just repeating the same stuff.
I guess what you're saying is option 4 would be bringing CES under, either city or fire department control and running it as a separate division of the fire department. That would qualify them for the